This episode of the Everything Matters podcast is brought to you by BeLegendary.coach, where we transform leaders into legends. Are you a senior leader, entrepreneur, or executive looking to take your leadership to the next level? Are you dealing with things such as imposter syndrome, concerns with whether or not your leadership is lingering long after you've completed phase time? Looking for new and innovative ways to connect with your team and to gain buy-in from stakeholders that you deal with on a daily basis? If any of this sounds like something that you're dealing with and you would like to take your leadership to an extraordinary level, your effectiveness to a legendary level, visit BeLegendary.coach. That's www.belegendary.coach and schedule your free performance analysis today. Hello, everyone. It's Bradford Speaks, host of the Everything Matters podcast, founder, CEO of BeLegendary.coach, a performance coaching and leadership development company where we transform leaders into legends. Today's episode features a very special guest of mine and a good friend, Nadia Rahali. Nadia works in the world of philanthropy, which is one of the areas that you don't typically tend to find a lot of African Americans or Black Americans working in. Nadia's been working in this space for several years now. She works for some of the biggest producers in the country and in the world in bringing significant funding into really needed spaces. Today, Nadia and I are going to create a conversation around our relationship to money. We all know and can agree that we have a relationship with money. Having a healthy relationship with money is a different conversation. So we're going to talk about that, our relationship to money, scarcity versus what's sufficient. We're also going to talk a little bit about relationships and dating. Nadia, living in Midtown Atlanta in the prime of her life, the dating scene is something that she's a big part of. We're also going to talk about the critical importance of being authentic in life, living your life out in the open, and also taking responsibility for your life. So please join me in welcoming my very special guest to the Everything Matters podcast, my friend, my sister, Nadia Rahali. Let's get it popping. Nadia. What's up, sis? How are you doing? Welcome to the Everything Matters podcast. So excited to finally get you on the show. Oh my gosh. I've been running you down for probably since I think I wanted you to be like the second guest on the show back in March, and that never happened. So thank you for accepting the invitation and being here today.
No, thank you. Thank you for having me, Bradford. And I know it's just a way that I am, that I find myself in this, a lot of times I'm in reflective mode, and, you gotta really get me out, and you really gotta drag me out and be in front of people. So, this is amazing. And it's also confronting. If I really were to tell the truth, I think I was confronted, and I'm like, I don't want to be on a platform. I'm good. I'm good behind the scenes. I don't need to tell people. I don't need people to tell me. So the truth is, I was just avoiding.
Yeah, I got it. And I appreciate that. I appreciate you being authentic about that and telling the truth. And, it's okay, right? I mean, I'm sure you're not the first one to get onto the podcast or any podcast and feel some sorts of feelings about, resistance or hesitation. So I totally get that. But again, thank you for being here and welcome. So let's get the elephant out of the room, or out of the closet, or, however you say that, right? Let's just talk about what's really there. When you started talking, it's clear that you have an accent. So let the audience know where you're from. Where do you reign from? And I know you live in Atlanta now, but where are you originally from? Where'd you grow up?
No, although I've been in Atlanta for 20 plus years, I originally am from North Africa. I'm from Morocco. I'm born and raised in Casablanca. So that's my lineage. That's my my home. Yeah.
Outstanding. Now, I know you said you're a part of some particular sect of Morocco. Tell me about that. What does that mean? How's that work there?
Yeah. So really great question. Africa is a huge continent, and before colonization, we didn't have the notion of nation states. So there were these kingdoms, and you had Berbers and Mende and Fulani, and you keep going Sub-Saharan Africa, they're, Igbo
Okay.
and so my people, my family is Berber, which means that they are indigenous people of North Africa. They belong to the desert. They belong to the mountains, the Great Atlas Mountains, if you've heard of them.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like my grandmother, for example, her and I, because I didn't grow up in that part of the country. I grew up in Casablanca, which was modern and was Arabized. The Arabs invaded North Africa, and there were parts of North Africa that were never that they never assimilated. They took on the Berber people took on the religion, but they kept their identity. They kept their language. So my grandmother, for example, who was tribal and like had face tattoos and hand tattoos.
Wow.
As a child, when we would drive from Casablanca to the village to the desert, and we never had language because I spoke French and Arabic. She spoke her tribal dialect, so the tribe that she belonged to. But we spoke love. There is something about love that's never, you don't do love. It's a being, it's an experience. And so my grandma Ito is her name, Ito.
Okay.
And that's sort of my lineage. I come from an ancient. Yeah.
For sure. Yeah. I'm fascinated with Africa. I've never been, and I certainly, it is on my bucket list to do before I check out this place one day. I want to go and do a tour. I know it's a huge continent. I think it's actually bigger than the way it's depicted on the maps, but that's a different conversation.
Oh my God.
So it doesn't give it any justice, right?
It's diverse. I mean, from one region to the next, in its languages, in its traditions, in its food, art, and it's amazing. So definitely make that happen.
I will. I might be counting on you to help me make that happen. Right?
We can do that.
So great. So I know that in African culture and in a lot of cultures, outside of the U.S., I wish we were more like that. But I know that the parental and child relationship is really unique and significant. Tell us about culturally what it was like growing up, your mom and dad. And I know that you lost your dad, not long ago, and much love in my heart goes out to you and your family. But what was it like for you growing up and having that relationship with your mom and dad? I know you were really close to your dad. So tell us about that.
I was lucky. My parents were together since 1966. So right after independence, they both grew up during colonization, and they were that generation that went to school in Europe and came back to rebuild the country. And really, like, my parents were people who lived to make a difference for other people. So my dad had a what do you call, like a trade school. He built a trade school in our. My mother had a literacy project where she worked with women who didn't know how to read and write. Like my grandmother doesn't know how to read and write. My grandfather took kids from shanty towns that had no opportunities, and my dad was an electrical engineer, and he taught them how to, study the grid and how to change things, and had them working at the plants where they actually make electricity. And so I grew up in sort of an environment where both my parents had a commitment to family, to, having children and raising them. And they were a commitment to making a difference for people. So it wasn't just, work and have a good life. It wasn't enough. Having a life for others, that was their fulfillment. So I grew up in that conversation. I grew up in that culture of that my life doesn't work when the people around me their lives doesn't work. And that was really the best gift. And also my mom and dad's relationship, coming from a culture where there is this misconception that women coming from an Islamic culture or, West or North African, that there is this submissiveness, or that there is, but I really got the experience of discovering how to be a woman, how to actually have your power, not being forceful. So I discovered the difference between force and power just in watching my relationship with my mom and my dad, where, she worked, she was modern, but when she came home, it was like, like my dad was like the king, she was like being of service. She did everything for him. And that was a great, great example, to grow up in, to watch. And I think sometimes, in our modern way, we forget. I tend to forget that, but I'm always, I just pick up the phone and talk to my dad, or, I'll be FaceTiming with him, and he'll say, Amina, my mom's name is Amina, go get me a glass of water. And she'll just get up and get him
right.
You do over here, like, go get me a glass of water. Like, no, go get your own glass of water. So, I'm grateful for what they showed us in their relationship together. And I'm really proud of my parents. I'm proud of my dad and his contribution. And he's someone who, like, never stopped. He worked all the way until his last breath. Like, he made a difference all his life. So
really awesome. And now, as you say that, now it's clear to me why you take the approach that you take around life and why you're such a big contribution to other people. And I want to get more into that, but it makes total sense. That's what you saw as an example growing up. And, just kind of backing up a little bit, one of the things that you said that really stood out to me is, how your mother knew how to be powerful outside of the home. But when she was in the home, she knew how to take care of her man. And I think that is something that culturally, maybe even on a global scale, I would argue that's missing. Like, it's missing because a lot of women today look at serving your husband or being a contribution to your husband or your spouse means that you're weak and that you're being taken advantage of and that you are, that you're not powerful. And that's not true at all, and that's not to say that each person shouldn't be a contribution to the other. Right. I mean, she's to serve him and he's to serve her, vice versa. So I'm just thrilled that you had that example to see growing up, and really wish so many other kids had that example to see growing up. So thank you for sharing that. Really great. So Nadia, I know that you ended up coming to the States. So tell me about how old were you when you came to the States and what brought you to the United States?
I was 18 when I came to America, and I came for school. And what I remember when my dad gave me my passports, it was like the night before I was leaving. And I'll never forget that. I remember exactly where we were sitting in my bedroom. My sister and I shared the same bed. So I was on my bed. And we not shared the same bed. We had two beds. We shared the same room. The other bed was made up. And then mine was, my suitcase was ready and packed. And he said, I'm not sending you for money, or I'm not sending you but I'm sending you to really be someone that can stand on her own and can make a difference as well. And I'll never forget that. And so I came, and I went to school at Old Dominion University. I majored in political science and African American studies.
Okay.
And my dad was always fascinated. He was someone that always saw beauty in everywhere, whether it's driving, to the farmer's market and seeing something, whether it's food, whether it's in the arts or cinema. Right. And I remember growing up how he loved leaders of the civil rights, specifically the SNCC leaders. So the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee leaders. And they had these they were what you call impossible cool, like the Julian Bonds and the Stockley Carmichael. And they had this way of being and the way they dress. And it was something that all this, what we would call now swag. He always and album covers of John Coltrane and, that era
Nat King Cole. Yeah.
Miles and, shorter. So I was always fascinated, and I always was fascinated by people's histories and migrations, and knowing one thing about it, when the education system abroad is history is really ingrained in you. So we know a lot about history. And something that
Gotcha.
was really fascinating to me is the story of Africans in the New World, the whole Black Atlantic, the whole Black experience. And so I chose African American studies as a place to explore my own humanity and
Yeah.
explore just the human condition and how people the resilience of people and the creativity of Black
Yeah.
Americans, the self-expression, the technological advances, all these contributions in the face of oppression, in the face of not having anything,
Yeah.
my life and is indebted to the people that came before, and so yeah, it was amazing, and I met some amazing giants of the movement,
Indeed.
and that was really a great time in my life. My professor was came to Georgia State University to
Okay.
become the dean of African American Studies department.
Okay.
So I had that connection also in Atlanta, and I knew people in the movement that were here. So
Yeah.
moving to Atlanta was sort of a natural progression.
Right. Absolutely. Because I think Old Dominion's is it in Virginia, I think?
Virginia, yeah, it's in
Okay.
the Tidewater area, and
Okay.
yeah.
Cool. So yeah, Atlanta is definitely a natural if you want to really immerse yourself in Black history. The South is a great place to go. Alabama, Mississippi, my home state, which I know you love, Louisiana,
I
as well as Georgia. Yeah, you love Louisiana. I'm gonna let you talk about that. What do you love so much about my home state? What is it?
Well, one is it's that French connection. So I'm, French speaker, so it's the closest thing to my culture, and
Right.
Louisiana is big, but I love New Orleans. And from the '90s, I used to go to the Jazz and Heritage Festival, and I would just back then we didn't have Airbnb.
Right.
I knew people like in the French Quarter, like on Dauphine and Ramparts and
Yeah.
Basin
Yeah.
Street. And they would rent me like the back cottage of their home, and I would bus, take the Greyhound and
Right.
go all the way to I think it's that train station. Is it Union Station or
Yeah.
there's like
Right by the Superdome, the trail. I think it was Greyhound.
there is a Greyhound there. Sometimes I'll take the train,
Yeah.
but like whatever it took, I'm going to be at Jazz Fest. And it was
Right.
also a safe space where people are like, "Aren't you afraid to be there by yourself?" And
Right.
and I'm like, "No, they think I'm Creole. They, especially when my hair is natural and it's
Right.
not." They
Yes,
think
indeed.
I'm Creole. So, and then they let me in the jam sessions. I go, like, I'm a homegirl. Like,
Right.
homegirl. And
Absolutely.
Katrina changed a lot.
Yeah.
And so I'll be there in November. I'm going there for a concert, and then I'll be there
Okay.
for 10 days for Christmas as well. But it is my second.
Nice. Very nice.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I'm trying to catch a couple Saints game this year. I think I'm gonna try to do the Ravens game. They play on Monday night. So Jock Stud, you said you got your boy covered, bro. So I'm coming through. All right. So you're welcome to New Orleans anytime you want to, sis. We appreciate having you down there. And the French Connection, I like that too. It's a good cocktail as well.
Yes.
So awesome stuff. Awesome. So you moved to Atlanta, and my understanding is you didn't really get a chance to work in African American studies, which, as a profession or career per se, but you're surrounded by all the history here. So there's always opportunities to look into and to explore, right? What you learn so much. And I always respect people who are able to come out of school at 16, 17, 18 years old out of high school and know that they want to study culture, something like that. It's just pretty fascinating. That's fascinating to me because God knows at 18 years old, I was not in any way interested in culture, other countries. I just want to play football. That's all I cared about. So I really acknowledge you for, having that interest at such a young age is pretty beautiful. So you are in Atlanta, and I know that right now, and I don't know how long you've been doing this. You can share that with us. I know you got into fundraising, and that's a big part of what you do. And I have a lot of respect for people that do that too, because you're talking to people that you don't even know. You got to build relationships, create these relationships, and create these pathways to get them to open up their pocketbooks, so to speak, right? So talk to us about what you do in fundraising and how you fell into that particular space.
So my pathway to nonprofit was very interesting. It's kind of like the power of when you say something, it actually happens. And sometimes I forget, like at that young age, how I made things happen.
Yeah.
And so being in a nonprofit world it makes sense coming from the background that I came from.
Right.
But I was in a domestic violence marriage years. Okay. That was another sort of marker in my life. Mm-hmm. And I remember I was at work, and we used to have these. We used to have my boss one day. He said, "Come down to the office. I want to come." I mean, he called me and he said, "We have this event. Come down to the employee cafeteria."
Right.
And these people that came and talked called United Way. I didn't know nothing about them. And they talked about giving and why giving is important. And one of the things that they talked about is that they also support people, women who are in shelters and domestic violence and that whole world. Right. And so I don't know, like I wanted my money to go towards that. And he said, and I was making nothing, and I contributed $5 every payday. So it's like you just do like a pledge, and it's a workplace campaign.
Right.
And so, and I in my life, I happened to be in a situation where I needed support. And I remembered those people who said, there is this hotline, call 211 and call them and they can help. And it's a referral line and they can guide you. So it wasn't a moment in my life where I needed that service. And I called 211 and the person was talking to me and she was listening, and I said, my husband is this, and he hits me and blah blah blah. And she says, she said, well, tomorrow I can give you some calls, some numbers to counseling services. Right. You could call them and they can help you. Mm-hmm. But then she started to ask like deeper questions and probing me, and she really saw that I was really, really like this was not, because there is this perception that domestic violence only impacts women who are uneducated, who are poor, who are, I didn't, there is this perception. And so I'm grateful for her that she did probe some more and ask deeper questions to really get to what I was dealing with. And that was the beginning of my freedom. That phone call that I made, that action that I took, was the beginning was the first step. I didn't know how I was going to get out of it. I didn't know how, think about it. I don't come from that background. I come from a family that had like my dad and mom they've all my life, they were together, didn't experience any of that. And so how do I get into this situation? How did I get myself into this?
Right.
So, when I actually like overcame it, and I said to myself, I want to work for the United Way. And then when I came to Atlanta, there was this job at the Loudermilk Center, which is a convening space for
I'm familiar with the Loudermilk. It's really nice. Yeah.
So it's nonprofits, it's civic organizations, it's corporate companies that come together and create the future of the city. So we put tons of programs. We help people with their events, their fundraisers. So then I got into this world of, fundraising, events fundraising, and I work with small nonprofits, got on boards of nonprofits, work with small nonprofits on how to fundraise, how to get the resources. And so you're like, well, how does this person from like North Africa really get something about money and how to have those relationships? But remember, I grew up with tribal people who were resource poor. They didn't have money, but they had something. They had conversations. They knew how to share. They knew how to
Right.
give. So they may not give money like, here's $1 for this cup of water, but for this cup of water, I can give you a chicken. So I remember my
Right.
grandmother negotiating with men in the fields, and she'd go and give eggs, and they would give her cheese, and they would give her. So there was always this sense of this dance
Right.
of exchange. And I learned it from where I came from. So there is a it's a context. It's where are you coming from? How are you asking people? What is it in service for? What
Right.
makes people give? What makes people contribute? So those are
That's
the
right.
things that, in training and in trial and error is like my calling is what I'm really, I find myself thriving and connecting people. So connect your resources with something that's important to you. That's all that is.
Right.
And so that's how I got into it. And now I'm really like expanding and looking at, working with leaders who lead teams in a realm of fundraising as well as revenue generation and business development.
Okay.
And looking at the barriers, looking at the contacts that they are inside of, and how to have them, be in action, and the resources are in service of a possibility. They're in service of a mission. They're in service of a
Right.
vision.
Right.
So that's where I kind of like my coins. That's where I love to traffic in, and that's what I love to play and contribute to.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a neat space to be in, and it's got to be very rewarding to see the difference that you're making with people, with organizations. The United Way is a great conduit to give you opportunities to do that. So thank you for the work that you do, and the people that you're contributing to, and the people that you're helping. So one of the things that you touched on in the domestic violence deal, which is, I just never understood really why someone would need to hit someone. And I know that there's psychological, emotional reasons why people do what they do. People still dealing with past issues that they haven't gotten past and haven't gotten complete with. As human beings, we're dealing with all sorts of things. So, how did you finally pull yourself out of this? I know you took the action, you made the call, but I mean, you had to go back and clean your stuff out. You had to get the guy out. Like, what did that look like coming out of that situation? I'd love to hear, more about that.
I always say, like, wherever I go around the world, I'm always Muhammad's daughter. I'm like, I am my father's daughter. And, so I tell all the men, be close to your daughter, because she might drift, like I drifted and I made some bad choices, but I always come back to where I am. It's critical to be close to your daughters. And Bradford and I talk about this with your daughters.
Yeah. Listen, girls, listen, stay close to your dads. Listen to Miss Nadia.
Yeah, you could drift, but you'll always come back. As much as I, again, as I said, I'm a thinker. As I said earlier, I'm really an introvert. I'm a thinker. I'm someone that can get lost in ideas. If you come to my home, it's books everywhere. It's
right.
So I can be like in a place by myself for a whole week, and I'm in paradise. And being a thinker, actually, I remember one night I had a dream. My mom called me. It wasn't a dream. It was a bad night. It was not a good night. And my ex, with all due respect, he had his own mental health issues, and he's a victim of his environments as well. So at the end of the day, like, I can be responsible for my part, and we're all part of our environment, products of our environment. My mother called me one Saturday morning. It was Friday night. He had came back from the studio, and it was really, really bad. And she said, I had a terrible dream about you. And at that moment, like I had a vision. That what's predictable for me, if I stayed in this relationship, what's predictable is one day my mom will be greeting me. Like I could see her dressed in traditional clothing at the airport. And rather than me coming, there is, how you have the little thing with the luggage, it will be the luggage and then a coffin. That would be my, that would be my sentence. And I said, if I'm going to go that way, then I'm going to go with dignity, and I'm not going to like go, if I'm going to die, I want to die with dignity, and not without standing for myself, and remembering where I came from, remembering my ancestors, remembering, there is a whole other episode or two about my grandfather and my everything else that they did.
Sure.
And it was very simple. I took one action, which was, I was like, I'm going to take over my finances. And I didn't have a bank account at that time. And I would just give him all my money and say, just to like, let him off of me, and and to not diminish him, because I was doing well in my life and I was moving up, and so I went to the bank, and I remember, and I'll never forget, it was this tall guy, an African American, and he said, how can I help you? It was around Thanksgiving, and I said, I'd like to cash this check. And he looks at my check and he said, you want to cash this? You don't have a bank account? I said, no. Because I would give my check to my ex. I would endorse it, and he would cash it, and then he'll give me my parts and whatever.
Right.
So, and I come from that culture where that's acceptable.
Sure. Yeah, nothing's wrong with that. Yeah. If you guys have an agreement, it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine. So he said, do you want to open your own bank account? And I said, and I hesitated. And then I said, you know what? Yes. I said, I am. And so I opened the bank account, and I said, but I need money. And
I need money like now.
I need it. He said, yeah, I can give you, how much do you need? I said, I need 500 cash. He said, no problem. So he gave me 500 cash. So I went home, and my ex was at home, and, he was dressed. He had his butters, his Timbs. He had, he was ready to go shopping or whatever. But because it was Thanksgiving, I lied to him. I said, they didn't pay us. They're going to pay us on Friday. Because if I tell him the truth, oh my God,
yeah.
What if he finds out, like, where do I go for 2 days? I don't have family. Where do I go?
Right.
So I survived the Thanksgiving day. We went to like a diner. We had Thanksgiving dinner, whatever. And then Friday I went to work, and I came back, and I said to him, and he was 12 o'clock. We worked like a half day. So I put myself into work to avoid everything else. And I came in, I opened the door, and he was very nice. And I told him the truth. I said, here's $500. This is for you. You could do whatever you want to do. I'm going to pay the rent. I'm going to take care of everything, and then he called his mother, and, so that was the beginning of, from then it wasn't so bad. I was like, oh my God. So then I took the next step. And then all of a sudden I made my declaration, and I said, I was leaving, and the lease was on my name, and I was paying all the rent, and I paid for 3 months for him. And I said, I'm not going to be, God you're suffering anyway. Right. So I'm leaving. Right. You're taken care of for 3 months, and you're on your own. But most importantly, I think what had me, I want to take that back. I did have somebody, my grandmother-in-law and my mother-in-law, Miss Janice Jotes and Miss Gertrude Jotes, hands down, if it were not for them, I would not be alive. Because I had Black women who empowered me, who would tell me, you don't deserve this. He's our son, and you are our daughter, and we love you. So imagine, I fell in a family like that, and I fell with women who, without them, I wouldn't have had the courage.
Yeah.
So I, they're always angels. And like, I remember when I came to Atlanta and, I came in a Greyhound bus, so I didn't have any money. I mean, I had some money. I lived in an extended stay for like almost a year. I couldn't afford my own place. The extended stays are so expensive
Yeah,
that
for sure.
You would, and there was no way for me to pick up the phone and call my parents and say I need help. So, when people say, "What do you like?" Don't let this thing fool you. I've gone through all
Yeah.
sorts of space. But when I moved here, there was this woman that came down with me. We were in DC at Union Station, coming down to Atlanta, and her family, an older lady, and her family. I was sitting in a chair, and the seat that was next to me was empty, and the woman said that her family asked me, "Can she sit with you? Are you going to Atlanta?" I said, "Yeah." Could you keep an eye on her? So that entire time, I'm broken, and I'm actually like coming here as a refuge,
Right.
And she can feel something. Like I said, love is not spoken. It's felt.
Yes,
And
communicated. Yeah.
that whole time I would get off at some small town, and I'll go use the bathroom, and I'll say, "Do you need anything from the," those were the only times we talked. And so when I got to Atlanta, and the train station here, the bus station is on Garnett Station.
Right.
And I get off and I go to call a cab. Back then you didn't have Uber or anything. And then I see this woman tap me on my shoulder, and she taps me, she said, "Hey baby, here's $10 for you. Go do something nice for you." And it was almost like that moment of, I'm not alone. There's always an angel. There are always these women, men as well, who are, it's almost like I'm in a garden. Like the contacts for my life, I'm not by myself, but I'm really like in a garden. And while I'm walking in the garden, there is beauty around me. Right. And there are people that come through and make a difference. So that's sort of, sort of the narrative. And then I get with the Laudermilk Center, I get with United Way. And I create my life. I create my niche. I live in Midtown. I own my own condo in a high rise, and and every time that extended stay place, actually, it just got demolished recently.
Oh wow, and,
really? Every time would drive by or see it, like, wow, you've come a long ways. And it was that man in the bank who said to me, "Would you like to open your bank account?" That if that didn't happen, like life, there are these like forks, there are these things that like you go this way, you go this way. And that was the path that I took, and who knows? So
opportunities.
I
see all those opportunities. They come along all the time, and you just have to be willing to see them as such, and I like the analogy that you painted of the garden, because I mean, there's a it can be a garden or it can be a dump, depends on what your point of view is and how you choose to look at life, right? I mean, and I choose to look at my life as a garden too, because I think every human being that I come in contact with, every experience, everything that I go through, everything that I deal with is an opportunity for a new opening. It's an opportunity to create and do something different. It's an opportunity to invent things that weren't there before, right? And it's an opportunity for me to examine myself and who I'm being in life, like, and what am I creating for myself, and who am I contributing to, and making a difference for. And I think we're similar in that way. I think we're always looking to see where we're coming from, examining what our intentions are, like what are our commitments, like who do we really want to impact and why. And I think that is the root of performance. And I know that one of the things that you do is we sort of move on to the next part of the conversation. One of the things that you're really big on, which is something that we really connect on, is performance. And I know that you do. You mentioned earlier that you're working with building, your coaching base of working with high performers, people in the fundraising space to do that. So, in your experience in working with high performers, which is what I do as well, what do you find that gets even a high performer stuck? Because everybody has their slumps, right? They have your peaks and your valleys. Everybody has those. You go through those phases in performance. But what do you see that's probably most consistent than any other thing that gets people who tend to be high performers sort of stuck and unable to figure out what's my next move? What am I going to do next? Like they sort of lose their vision. What do you see being in the case of getting in the way for those folks?
Really great question, because and I could speak to that because I live it in my life, where the things that had me be successful and had me, survive, homelessness and survive, which is performance. Like, I took the action. That's just what it is. That same thing can also be the thing that doesn't work for you. That also can be in the way. So it has its benefits, but it also has its sides where if you're not connected to, the mission, what is this in service of, then it really becomes about the numbers, and it is about the numbers. And so when you don't make the numbers, then it becomes about you. Like, I didn't make the month. And, I had a slump in March, for example, where I was just really, really slumpy and things weren't happening, and I didn't make my goals, and I looked at, what was missing and where was I standing. And I saw that, one, it was my integrity was off. So there were proposals that I didn't submit on time, calls that I didn't call back. So I called myself a high performer. And at the same time, when the performance is not there, one of the things you want to look at, what is the foundation? It's like a house. You can build a house, but if the house is not built on a strong foundation, it's not going to perform. It's not, what is what's that fable, the three pigs and the different houses?
The brick, the wood, and the straw, or something like that. Yeah.
It's like a straw house. There is no foundational thing to it.
That's right.
So when I work with people, I look at, one, we examine the integrity, of the system, of the human being. So when I get on the phone with a client, with a prospect, is there anything between me and those people? Where am I standing? Right. Is it about me or is it about them? And so when it's about them, I'm really great at it, and I deliver the results. But when it becomes about myself and my numbers, and then it doesn't work. And in the nonprofit world, it's really not. It is the numbers. The goal is a fulfillment of something. So if we're out here to eradicate, homelessness, then, the resources that and then this is the goal that we're going to have, is actually in the service of fulfilling that mission. And so those are some of the things that we work on. It's not just the actions, but also the being of that leader, and, what's the quality of the action? So
for sure.
I when you call a prospect and you have a conversation, what do you say? What do they say?
Right.
What's the quality of your conversation? What's the quality of your follow-up?
Yeah.
So it's not like a transactional, I sell you, I have a conversation, you have this cup. No, it's people actually giving you their resources as a fulfillment because they are committed to eradicating homelessness or the environment, or so it's sometimes the results are not, it's not like instant. It's not, you're not going to eradicate homelessness overnight, but it's a commitment. It's something that may not show up in their lifetime.
Very true.
But it'll be a legacy, So you see people, the Woodruff Art Center, the
High Museum,
the of Art, it's all these naming opportunities. So I work around, one, language. how do we use language to create worlds where donors really are inspired and they really want to work with you, and and we look at the integrity of the system, the integrity of the person that's making the calls. We do all sorts of mocking. We play, and then we look at what's in the way between them and people when they're having these conversations. And then look at the outcome, iterate, look at what's missing, and then come back and do it again, and then come back and do it again, and come back and do it again. So
I love it. The practice of it, right? One of the things that you mentioned a few times is integrity, and I just want to, for context, create what that is with people who are listening to the podcast. That we're not talking about a moral or an ethical kind of an integrity, because a lot of times when people hear integrity, they hear morality. And what you're talking about is a state. When you talk about building that home on a foundation, it's a state of wholeness. It's a state of complete. It's a state of being complete. Nothing's missing. Everything is where it's supposed to be. And so when you look at bringing integrity around your performance, it's the same thing the people I coach with is integrity. Is you want to look and see, where is something out of place that should be where it is, to give yourself that stability that you need to build from. And one of the areas that I know you mentioned earlier that you wanted to share was the fact that you've been able to build integrity around your finances, right? And bring integrity to your finances. And so talk about that, like the process of bringing integrity to your finances and what that's meant for you. What's been the outcome, the result that you've been able to really realize out of bringing that integrity around your finances?
So another pivotal moment in my life was when I did the Landmark Forum. And I was like 4 or 5 years ago. And a friend of mine who used to run these word camps invited me to do the forum. And I was like, okay, I really saw something, and for that, a possibility for my life of, having freedom and being, completing that past. It was all about completing past. And I said, well, what do I have to lose? So I did the Landmark Forum. And in there, I really discovered this world of that we are whole and complete. And all there is when we don't have power, when we don't have freedom, when we're not self-expressed. So like, I think I shared with you that I'm an introvert. What I'm really not an introvert, but I am. It's just how I wound up being.
Right.
That my that I was suppressed, with everything that I had in life. I was numb and I was suppressed. And there were things around my finances that really were not in integrity. That, I had this thing on my credit. So it wasn't much. Like, my credit was not bad, but it wasn't great.
Right.
And and when we would have conversations, I'd be with colleagues at lunch or with clients at lunch, or and the thing around credit shows up. It's like I want the earth to open and I can just hide. Where can we? And then switch or not? And I'll connect and say, "Oh, did you see the New York Times? There was a story about the environment, about whatever." I didn't want to deal with that. Like, I did not want to deal with it.
Yeah.
And so I thought self-expression was having nice clothes and nice shoes. And by the way, like, shoes are everything for me. So I went to Catholic school. So, shoes were I had a uniform. Shoes were where I had to express myself. And so, so I created this possibility of freedom. And, and then and believe it or not, for some people, for me, that was a big deal to actually confront my credit reports.
Yeah.
And I called the people and I confronted it, and I called the lender, the person who, it wasn't a lender, it was my old apartment building that say I didn't pay.
Man, those apartment, they'll get you, boy. Them apartment complex, they'll get you, man.
No, I didn't renew my lease, but because I didn't give 3 months notice, they're like, well, it goes automatic. And I said, but I never, So anyway, long story short, it was a dent on my credit. And then I called the creditor and I said, I want you to, I'll pay it. And if you can remove it out of my credit.
Right.
And they were like, no, we'll show that it was paid. So I finally got it removed. And 6 months after my landmark forum is I got my credit to like mid 700s. And then January, I did my forum in August. In January, and then I got big for myself. So somebody that's in the money business and asking people and, like it was very inauthentic for me that I had this thing anyway.
Right.
That was in the background. So right. I was someone who, I was performing, but it wasn't really performance. It was forcing outcomes. It was getting things done.
Right.
So I had no freedom. And once I confronted that, like I really got big for myself. I was tall, and then April 12th, I closed on a condo in Midtown Atlanta.
Bravo. Indeed. That's a big deal. It's a big deal.
It was a big deal. And so here's this immigrant on her own, goes through, I love Greek mythology. So another thing that ancient Egypt and Greek mythology, I've always found my inspiration that, I had these, if for some people it's like it's not a big deal, but for me it was a victory, not in what I had, but in who I was for myself. That I had that a bank actually trusted me to say, you know what, your word is bond, and we will give you this loan at this interest with this little down payment.
Right.
And I also had a breakthrough in my retirement. I caught up in my retirement, and so all of that, enriched me and really had me, keep it 100 with people. Like I don't have it all together.
Yeah.
I don't have it all together, and I have it all together. So there are these these dualities, these paradoxes, and it's okay.
It's okay. Totally okay. Yeah, I got that. I mean, breakthrough of finances is huge. And, what I keep hearing you say, you mentioned, completing the past and clearing the past, right? You have to have a clearing to be able to, talk about bringing integrity. You've got to have a clearing first. And a lot of times that clearing is created by having communication and getting things out of the way that are in the way, like picking up the phone and calling the apartment complex and saying, hey, I want to work with you to get this squared away. What do we need to do? It's a simple phone call, and that single action opens up a possibility for you to bring integrity around other areas of finance. And that's beautiful. Yeah. And this is really what performance is about at its core. It's really powerful what you created there. It's awesome.
That action, Bradford, altered.
Yes. Your future.
Like, it altered me.
That's right.
So I'm not the person behind the scenes hiding and, and being suppressed and keeping everything inside and pretending that it's cool.
Yeah.
And, so and then there's still work to do. There is still work to do.
Always. There's always work to do. No doubt about it. Nadia, really, really powerful stuff. So thank you for everything that you're giving here on the interview. And thank you again for just sharing your world. I mean, we're getting so much value out of what you're creating here on the podcast. So I want to ask you, you sort of fell into this space, but we shouldn't say that, not that we shouldn't, but we could say that everything happens for a reason, right? We could say that, whether it's true, who knows, but we could say that everything happens for a reason. And you sort of fell into this space of fundraising, if you will. So it's not I don't think it's a career that people come out of college thinking, I want to go into fundraising. I don't want to work for a nonprofit. Some people might say work for a nonprofit, but they may not be thinking about what comes along with that. So if I were, my 21, 22-year-old self, and I met you in Midtown Atlanta, right, in a cafeteria somewhere, we're in a restaurant and I meet you and you start talking about what you do. And I say, man, that's a really interesting thing to do. I never even thought about fundraising or working for like the United Way, would look like. What advice would you give me if I said, you know what, I think that might be a career that I might be interested in? What would you tell me?
Just be open. Just really look at what's your relationship with money. So I don't think I shared this, but I used to work for the Office of Development at the National Black Arts Festival. And
Okay.
I did the events fundraising. And I really, really was curious about people and curious about the donors and connecting them to the arts and humanities. I wasn't there to party, even though the festivals were amazing and there was so much that we were
Right.
doing, but I
Right.
was there to actually work. So, humble yourself, be someone that makes a difference, be a student. One of my favorite jazz musicians, Keith Jarrett, who says there are no masters, they are just students. Be a student of life, be a student of people. What are people interested in? Be of service. And that's the biggest thing, is like really be of service. You see something, pick it up. You go in a bathroom and it's dirty, pick it up. Those small little things, even if you didn't do it, even if it's not your area, you become a clearing for that. You develop a muscle in actually being someone that makes a difference, being someone that is of service with just little small things like that.
Yeah.
If go get a mentor. I had mentors. I had people that I looked up to, that Miss Arlene, her birthday is coming up. I don't even remember how I met her. But look at the people that do it really well, and go and learn from them and mimic them. And I'm not saying like bite them or, but really go study them. And people are generous. People will help you. People will, people have, I can call I have so many relationships in Atlanta, some top leaders, and I can call and they will do anything for me. And keep people's business. Do not keep gossip. Don't gossip. Don't gossip about people. And, I trust me. I love to gossip. I love a juicy girl, let me tell you, or, I love that. But trust me, when people can trust you with their life, when you are in this world, people share so much with you. And it's important that people know that you are to be trusted, and practice not gossiping.
Love it. And gossip is something and have fun.
Have fun. So
gossip is something that I talk about with people a lot, especially people that I'm coaching. Things happen, things come up in life, situations happen. And it's very easy to people want support. People want to have people that are on their side. So in doing that and trying to gain that advantage, if you will, a lot of times we go out and gossip, and we don't realize how damaging and destructive gossip is. It completely can destroy relationships, families, organizations. Performance, for sure, is a big impedance of performance, right? So thanks for bringing that up. I appreciate it. So I know that you've had a lot of people. You just talked about your black book, if you will, of contacts you have here in Atlanta. Who would you say? If you could pick one or two people, who would you say have had the biggest impact and influence on you, whether as a coach, just being a mentor for you? Who would it be? Who would you like to give a shout out to?
Definitely my father and my mother, my ex-mother-in-law, my sister, and and one of my teachers, and that I really, really love, is Lynn Twist from the Soul of Money Institute, an amazing teacher, and on gratitude, on forgiveness, on fundraising from the heart. So those are, and there's so many more.
I know. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you could keep going on and on with the experiences you've had and the people you've come across and the people that have really touched you. So thank you for that. I know that there's one thing that you wanted to share with the audience before we begin to sort of wrap things up. And it's an excerpt, I think, from a book that you wanted to share. So tell us about what that is and set us up for what you're going to share.
Of course. So I love to read. That's one of my, oh my God, I just ordered a book today. And I wanted to share something from the Soul of Money Institute.
Okay.
And, it's from Lynn Twist. And I wanted to share something about freedom and commitment. So many of us think that freedom means to keep our options open, stay loose and available. And often that strategy does give you a little space temporarily. Eventually, though, keeping your options endlessly open becomes its own prison. You can never choose. You can never fall in love. You can never marry. You can never take the job. You can never really discover your destiny because you are afraid to commit fully. So what I really want to say is discover your destiny, discover your journey. And, in my journey, I got a chance to discover my destiny.
I love it. Very well said. Very well said. Thank you for sharing that. And do you ever take on any mentees? Anyone that maybe wants to look at what it would be like to be in a career like that? Maybe do a conversation. You do anything like that? How would they find you? Yeah, how would they find you?
They can contact you, and you can give them my info.
Okay. All right, great. So what about social media? Do you have any social media platforms that people can follow or find you on?
On Twitter, you can follow me. It's Nadia Rahali. That's my handle. And on Instagram, it's Nadia_reads. So I have book recommendations, even though I'm really not active on social, on Insta, but you can on Twitter, I'll engage with you there. So it's Nadia Rahali. That's my handle.
Got it. Awesome, man. Nadia, this has been a really great interview and just so great to be with you today. Anything else that you want to share with the audience before you leave? The one question I want to ask you, and I haven't asked this question in a couple episodes, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to create it. It's really kind of a neat way of looking at your legacy. So when all the smoke clears, and I have a sense of what you're committed to and what really matters to you, but I would love to hear you create for us, when all the smoke clears, and, if we could use a headstone or your epitaph, if you will, what would you want that to say? And what would you want to leave people with when everything's said and done for you?
Gosh, that's such you don't ask people like me those kind of questions because, I can't just answer it with.
Try to keep it concise if you can. I know it's a big question.
So, I would say she lived a life that sings.
Now, I have to ask, can you say a little bit more about that?
No. Bring me.
That's it? All right. Hey, if anybody wants to know more about what Nadia means about her, she lived a life that sings, you can tweet at her and she'll give you more context about that. All right. Nadia, thank you so much for being on the Everything Matters podcast. It's so excited to have you here. And, I'm sure I'll be seeing you again soon. You're one of my very, very good friends. And thank you for all the work that you're doing to be a contribution to the world and to everyone that you have a hand in supporting. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for who you are and who you're being.
Thank you, Bradford. Thanks for your generosity. Thank you for believing in me. Thanks for, thank you for being my brother,
Absolutely.
From Louisiana. And I can't wait. By the way, I'm just going to come out and say it. I've been a closeted Saints fan because I'm in Atlanta with friends of Falcons. But
I know. I get it.
So anytime you want to go down to watch a game, I'll come along.
I got it. Hey, and you know what? So on the Everything Matters podcast, all Nadia's ATL friends, as my daughter called the Falcons, can't win a Super Bowl. She's declaring today she's a who dat nation. Welcome to the family, baby. Welcome to the family.
The black and gold.
Already, baby. I'm excited. I'm going to see the Falcons and the Saints open up this weekend. Actually, this weekend coming. I'll be at the fake Mercedes Superdome. I'll be down there for watching the game with my boys, me and my two sons. So excited about that.
Awesome.
Yes. All right. Well, hey, take care, love, and love you so much. And I'll see you soon.
Yeah. See you soon. Bye.
All righty. Bye-bye.
This is Doris Brown's baby boy. We out.